What is good, everybody? Welcome to Monday. That means under review with Stats and Vish. I'm Stats, Rob Guerrera. That's Vish Kumaran. What's up, Vish?
What's up, Rob? How have you been? What an eventful 7 days since the last time we talked.
Dude, I have been talking about Trey Lance and what the 49ers have done. I did 3 shows on Friday. I did ESPN radio on Saturday talking about it. It's been incredible what has happened here as we are just days away from the start of the regular season for the 49ers. It's like it never stops with this team. The craziness never stops.
It does never stop, and I do have a topic on it that I wanted to touch on with you on the phone that I want to get to with you, but I'm with you. I absolutely 100%. Like, I've never streamed that much in my life, the amount I streamed last week. And then Friday, I'm like, yeah, no way I'm streaming after the game. It starts 9 o'clock Central Time. I don't want to be awake coming on, sticking my face in front of a camera for the world to judge at that time. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to stream. And then he gets traded. And I'm like, screw this. I'm still not going to stream. So These are my first thoughts on it, because I was like, yeah, there's no way I can get myself to do this on a weekend and talk about it, especially after I did it 4 times. And we kind of talked about the same thing all 4 times over the course of the week.
Well, I did stay up along with Levin after the game. We did stream. We did the instant reaction show. That's there on the YouTube channel. Before we get rolling, I want to give a shout out to all the YouTube channel members. Thank you. If you want to sign up, it's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, membership badges, priority comment response. So please do like and subscribe to the YouTube page and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you leave a review, we'll read it. BD Jeezy says, the show's too negative. 2 stars, Vish. I love 49ers in 5 each morning. All other shows on this channel are too negative about a top 10 team in the NFL. You would think the Niners went 4-13 last year. Like I said, if you leave a review, I'll read it. I don't just read the good ones. I read all of them.
That's fair.
We always promise you 100% honesty and authenticity on this show. And I promise on all my shows, you will always get it. We're going to get into what happened with Trey Lance. We're going to get into what's going on with Nick Bosa, because I know you want to give your Trey Lance thoughts, but more so, we're going to give thoughts on the process that the 49ers executed with Trey Lance and if they've learned anything from it, because that's the key thing going forward, Vic. It's not just what happened, but have they learned anything from it at all, or do they just say, hey, chalk it up as a loss and move on? Because if they didn't learn from it, then that's the worst possible thing that could happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and time will tell if they've learned something from it. I do think that the lesson that it paints, and I tweeted about this, is a common theme with Shanahan and this regime, right? They've done a fantastic job doing so many things, right? They've built great organizational structure. They have a great process and a collaborative effort between their coaches and their scouts. They're very good at identifying the correct players late in rounds that are system fits and scheme fits that they can develop over the course of time to become really good football players on their team. So they do a lot of things really well. But one thing I've noticed is that Shanahan seems to fall in love with an idea or a player, and the Niners do whatever they can to make it happen, and they trade up for it, and it doesn't seem to work out. And the Trey Lance thing, I think, is the biggest example of this, but this example was also Trey Sermon. That was CJ Beathard. That was Joe Williams. That was Dante Pettis. There's a variety of different players. Brandon Ayuk is the only one, and there was a time that it looked like that one wasn't going to work either. Is the only one where it feels like Shanahan has fallen in love with somebody before the draft and they've used all those assets to go up. Look, they're bad in rounds 1 through 3, but they also have their hits. For me, it's less about hits and misses because the draft's a crapshoot and the Niners are batting above 50% in the draft, which is good. It's more about this particular issue where Shanahan seems to fall in love with something and they don't and we're going to talk about the process, but part of the issue with the process is the value. And once he falls in love, it turns into an emotional conversation rather than a value one. And that's where I feel like, why did you need to move up 10 spots to take Dante Pettis, right? Like Shanahan needed to have Dante Pettis. He couldn't sleep if they didn't get Joe Williams. He told Peter King CJ Beathard was the only quarterback that had a chance. Even yesterday or 2 days ago when he was talking about in his presser, he said they called every team from 12-3 to try and make a trade. And apparently nobody would budge, which is weird because right after they made a trade, a team went from 12-6 and then a team went from 12-10. But let's take him at his word They still made that deal a month before the draft because he was emotional and he felt like they needed a quarterback in that moment and he couldn't wait and wait out the process. They could have waited 1 week to see how things play out, right? Carolina ended up trading for Sam Darnold a week later and they were out of the quarterback conversation.
10 days later, yeah.
Right? Was it because of the Niners move up? Perhaps you could say that. And so I do think the one thing that we can learn, and I think they should learn, is somebody needs to check Shanahan when he gets too emotionally involved in one of these plans, because everything he does is fantastic. He just seems to do this one little thing, and this one little thing this time caused a lot more than giving up a couple picks and cutting Trey Sermon 2 years later. It caused an absolute circus in the media. It caused a circus with how they handle it. It was a catastrophe.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because Peter King basically said the same thing. I tweeted it out a little earlier today. Peter said there needs to be sort of, I think the phrase that Peter used was guardrails in place. And I agree, because you can't have this. This is terrible process. Nick Ellert says, since 2019, it's been twice. So the hardest part is saying who's responsible for this. Is Lynch trying to please Kyle, or is Kyle demanding? It's Kyle. Lynch answers to Kyle. There are still some 49ers fans that don't accept this. He answers to Kyle. Kyle hired him. He called Kyle Shanahan and asked, can I be your GM? If Kyle said no, Lynch is not the GM. So it's all on Kyle. Sorry, I'm trying to bring up the quote from Peter King so I can actually quote him instead of just...
Sure, I saw you tweet it, and I also read the article. It's a really, really nice read. And I think a lot of people will read that and immediately be like, oh, why are they hating on a team that's so good? It's not hate. I think we can all acknowledge the 49ers are really good and are going to be really good. They screwed the pooch big time here. This is not just, hey, they screwed up. This is one of the biggest blunders in NFL history with how they screwed up.
So here it is. I just pulled it up for people on the stream. Let's says, if I'm owner Jed York, Peter King wrote, I call Kyle into a meeting one day this week after the rosters are cut. I say, I love you. I think you're great at your job. However, you wasted 3 first-round draft picks on a quarterback you just tossed out in the trash after 2 injury-plagued seasons. That is not acceptable. We need to figure out a way to put some guardrails in place so that this never happens again. We don't have to do it now, but I want you to know that as the steward of this franchise, I'm going to take a more active role after this season in making sure something like this doesn't happen again. No matter how well we do this year, losing 3 first-round picks in succession is eventually going to be felt significantly on this team. I don't think Peter King is necessarily wrong, Vish. He does need guardrails. The problem is Jed's the only one that can do it, and I don't trust Jed either.
Yeah, 100%. I think part of the issue with the 49ers structurally is that it feels like nobody can check Kyle, right? Like, let's get into the process of the move, right? Because a lot of people, to me, are focusing on the finger injury and saying that's where it went wrong. I think it went wrong from the moment they made the move up and decided to draft Trey Lance. Because, one, I think they realized about the conflicting timelines right after the draft, and that's why they immediately decided to start Garoppolo, and it started this very, very funky situation where they had to manage 2 quarterbacks, and now they successfully won through it, so they deserve 100% credit for that. But it created a very, very difficult situation to handle. And to me, Rob, it all starts with the trade-up. The trade-up from the spot. Let's get ourselves to 3 so we can start evaluating these quarterbacks, and we can do it without having to do it in secret. And then let's give up all of that and go up so that we can decide if a quarterback is worth all of that. That's basically what they were telling you. That was wrong. Then they were calling about Stafford before that. They couldn't get him and all of that. But the day before the draft, this plan that they had so much, as John Lynch likes to say, but I'll use the correct term of the word, conviction. They had so much conviction in this trade, but the day before the draft, they heard Aaron Rodgers was available, and they got cold feet and tried to make a call about that, ruining Kyle Shanahan and Matt LaFleur's friendship for a little bit. So they were not 100%. They were not 100% in on this always. I think the process in which it took to draft Trey Lance was the biggest issue, and that's where I come to, why couldn't anybody have asked Kyle Shanahan and sat him down and said, hey, Kyle, why are we trading up a month before? Kyle, tell me who you're going to take. Otherwise, I don't want to trade up. And that's where there had to be, I think, a little bit of checks and balances here to protect somebody from themselves. It's not that the move failed, okay? Draft picks fail, okay? Draft picks fail. It happens. It's how the move failed. That's what's
Right.
important here. And the process in which they went into to create this move was incorrect. Nobody will ever do that again in NFL history. I promise nobody's ever going to trade up and decide who they're going to take after they trade up.
Yeah, that was always backwards, because what if all of a sudden you evaluate both and you're like, I don't know if I really love either one of these?
I think they got to that point. That's why they said, Rodgers, please make it happen.
That was the other thing. Yeah, is that they still inquired about Rodgers after making the deal. I don't have a problem with them taking big swings. Like, if Kyle loved Mac, let's just say he loved Mac or he loved Trey, and he was like 100% like love, then I'm fine with taking big swings. I'm fine with trading 3 first-round picks. I really am. But that's not what happened in this case. That is, he never loved either of these guys, and that is very clear. But not only that, Vish, I still think it could have worked. I really think if Kyle had stuck to his plan and continued to have Trey Lance in there in packages, moving him in and out, getting him opportunities to play, I think it would have been an easier transition in 2022 when he really wanted to give him the keys, because he would have had more experience. He would have had more time. He would have had more credibility in the locker room, which is, I think, a huge part of this whole thing. But Kyle went away from that plan. So even like, I think every part of this was flawed. And by the way, I just want to say, for all the move on people, Peter King wrote about it in his Monday column today. Albert Breer wrote about it in his Monday column today. ESPN Radio nationally was talking about it today. 95.7 The Game was talking about it today. So we're not moving on yet, okay? Don't worry. There's plenty of other time to get into the other stuff. I know people think that there's like secret Nick Bosa contract news that we're not telling you about because we're talking about Trey Lance. I promise you that's not the case. There's nothing happening with Nick Bosa.
If anything, they're deleting the Nick Bosa news, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's coming out and they're like, hey, pay no attention to the guy behind the clock.
Right. It's like the shiny new thing. But I think that they not only botched the process of trading up and that whole thing, but they botched it once he was here. If they had gotten any part of this right, we'd be in a different scenario right now. And
so I disagree with you there. How about that?
I
actually think they handled it fine once he got here, because I think it was a cause and effect. Once he got here, they realized, oh, crap, this is a 2-timeline situation for their team. I've talked ad nauseum. I haven't heard anybody else mention the complete 180 the 49ers, Shanahan and John Lynch did when they did their Monday presser for the Thursday draft, the week of the draft, versus what they said right after the draft, specific to Jimmy Garoppolo. I think they did a 180 there because I think they didn't realize how difficult it would be to integrate a young quarterback who's not immediately better than Jimmy with this team, how difficult it would be to replace Jimmy with this team. I don't think they fully evaluated or understood the magnitude of that. And since then, I think they were just juggling an uncomfortable situation where they had to make a series of choices. And in each of those series of choices, they chose against developing their young quarterback. They said, okay, we have to do what's best for our overall team, which is fine. But I don't think you have to make any of those decisions if you handle the process of trading up and who you're going to take correctly.
The problem is, I feel like I don't think they should have looked at it as two different things. Doing what was right for the guy you just drafted is what's doing right by the team. The fact that they didn't get that drives me nuts.
Okay, that's fair.
Quana says, I'd be okay if Kyle was fired if no Super Bowl. I'd be okay if Kyle was fired if no Super Bowl. 8 years and core players aging out could be a good time to move on. York should emphasize a strong leader, patient, and someone who knows quarterbacks. I don't think that, you have to move on. I think you can learn from this. I think the fact that he won buys him time and equity. And instead of saying you have to be fired, do something similar to what Peter King said, have a come to Jesus moment and figure out okay, we messed this up. How can we improve? How can we learn from it and change our process to be better in the future? I don't go automatically right to fire Kyle Shanahan.
That's a fantastic summation, right? You have a really good coach. You're not going to find that many coaches better than him, okay? So it's going to be difficult to find somebody that's going to come here and elevate this team above what you did. But now you've identified after 7 years, there is a problem with this really good coach you have. Right. Now, how do you fix that problem where you can maximize him? This is on Jed York. This is an opportunity for him to show himself as the leader of the organization, because this is an opportunity for him to not get emotional and angry that they wasted assets and instead find a way to learn from this and create a better organization for it. He didn't do this with Jim Harbaugh. When it went wrong, it just became personal between the two of them.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity for the 49ers to grow and learn from it. But to act like everything they're doing is right when they just handled that, the worst trade in NFL history for 2 years, I'm not going to sit here and do that either.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like that's
Right.
Don't jump right to fire Kyle Shanahan. Big Dez says, is it possible that Kyle put too much stock in what the locker room thought about decisions the front office made, especially with Jimmy being replaced? 1,000%.
I think so. Yeah, 100%.
1,000%. Jim Harbaugh did not give a crap what the locker room thought when he put Colin Kaepernick in for Alex Smith and kept him in. He did what he thought was best for the team. And you know what? They won and the locker room came along. And that's what I said.
They didn't have a choice in the matter.
As long as you win, you can do whatever you want. Even the 49ers in this case now, right? What is everybody saying? It doesn't matter. We have Brock. We're going to win, right? Winning covers everything.
It does. It does. Oh. And I think there's a greater point on that. And I heard Richard Sherman and Pete Carroll talking about on their podcast. And they were talking about all the shit that Seattle team used to go through that nobody cared about simply because that team was so good on the field, right? Like if the Seattle gets blown out in the Super Bowl by Denver, what do you think people are saying about Pete Carroll if Golden Tate and Percy Harvin get into an actual fist fight the week of the Super Bowl, right? Now that they win, it's just this really cool untold story. So that brings me to my point about the Niners. The Niners have had a circus offseason, okay? They've been in the news about everything. This has been a circus. Their quarterback situation has been a circus and how it's been talked about in the media. And the Bosa thing, while it wasn't a distraction, now that it's August 28th and he's still not signed, it's now a big national topic of conversation. Agreed. Now, we know distractions are the number one thing that NFL coaches, organizations hate, right? That's why none of them want to be on Hard Knocks. They don't want this extra attention and all of that. If the Niners win, right, these distractions, they won't be a topic. If they lose, they'll start to become the reasons why they lost, even if they have nothing to do with why they actually lost on the field. True. So let me ask you this. Do you think that there's too much noise surrounding this football team, especially when there's this Super Bowl and bust expectation on this team? Or do you think they're focused despite all this noise because they've dealt with this circus quarterback conversation for the last 3 years anyway, and they know how to deal with it? They're ready to go.
I think it would be worse if Trey was still on the team. Like, because as I've said, they have done right by Brock Purdy in a lot of ways because they've cleared the deck for him. There's no Jimmy Garoppolo. There is no Trey Lance. There is nobody to threaten Brock Purdy. No matter what happens with Brock. I don't care if Brock throws 20 interceptions this year. He should never be benched, ever.
Why? Who would he be benched for?
Who cares? No one I want to see play on the football field. I'll tell you that. Because you're still in a fact-finding mission with Brock Purdy. He's only played 8 games. Technically, if you go by the number of games played, like he's still a rookie, right? You got to play a full season before you're not a rookie in terms of games played. So you got to find out what you have with Brock Purdy because, and we talked about this before the show, if Brock plays this year and he's just, kind of mid, then he ain't going to be the starting quarterback next year. It's going to be probably Kirk Cousins or somebody else. And you have to find that out. And the only way to do that is for him to play. He has to play. So they cleared the deck for him. They've given him all their support publicly. He's the real deal. We think he's the guy, all that stuff. So they've done right by him in a lot of ways. And now I almost think like just playing the games will just be a relief for the 49ers players because all that crap is over with, especially assuming they get Bosa signed, which for the love of God, can we do that, please?
I agree, by the way. I also think it's good to mention for all the criticism that the handling of Lance has gotten them, I think they've handled Purdy great, actually, throughout the entirety of this offseason. I think they've killed it with how they've anointed him. What is that?
He's got a massive amount of pressure on him.
Well, yeah.
Now he's going to win them a Super Bowl, and he's got to make up for their Trey Lance screw up. So that's a lot of pressure.
And I think that pressure would have existed regardless, just because the football team has a lot of pressure and expectations. Now, I will say this also in regard to Purdy, because I think when we look at an NFL franchise, we look at kind of like their leadership contingent as owner, GM, coach, quarterback, right? Like these are the most prominent voices that we give most credence to on what they say to the media. I thought Brock Purdy of John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, 23-year-old Brock Purdy, first time being the franchise quarterback in front of the media, handled the media best in this Trey Lance situation. I think he handled it way better than the two of them.
Well,
He
I
was
don't think
honest. He was genuine. He got asked some really bullshit questions that he never got snarky to. Like, do you feel like bad that you are the starter now and Trey Lance is gone? Like, what is he supposed to say? And he answered that question fantastic. And the way he did all of that, I do think that his temperament as a leader of the 49ers will be good, because I think his temperament will be able to overcome some of the clown show circus that this conversation has turned into because of how it's been handled. And it's not just the trade, right, Rob? They handled it on Tuesday, Thursday,
oh,
Wednesday,
God.
and Thursday terribly.
And Shanahan's excuse that, like, oh, well, I taped the interview and I thought it was going to run and there was a baseball game. Dude, first of all, none of that stops John Lynch from getting in front of a microphone. So I don't want to hear that crap. That's John Lynch's only real job with this damn team, is to be a PR person. Where the hell was he? He was a ghost. And they stood up there and they answered questions, and Mike Silver's giving them flowers like, oh, I got mad at them at first, but now they did a good job. Of course they were going to stand up and answer questions. Like, we're giving them credit now for doing the bare freaking minimum. I thought that Brock did a good job. I thought that Kyle saying, I let Trey down, is the only person that's taken accountability for any of this, because Lynch is trying to sell you that this finger injury changed everything. That's the narrative that they got out.
But Lynch also took himself out of the decision, right? Like, before
Right,
the draft, Lynch told us it's all Kyle.
Yep.
And so Lynch is like, don't put this on me. I didn't draft this quarterback.
So I did like Kyle saying that he felt like he let Trey down. Like, that is accountability. And I think that he did. But at least now it's all over with. They've cleared the deck for Brock. He's healthy going into the season. There's some injuries that have gotten me a little scared on this team, like the Hufanga thing, the Baker cyst behind the knee. I saw some people say that maybe that could be a sign of a meniscus problem, which that's a scary thing.
The doctor said that, right? PFF doctor David Chow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look. He's never examined him. I have no idea, but I'm sure he knows what a Baker cyst is. That's a scary thing to keep an eye on. So, and maybe none of it matters, right? That is the craziest thing, is that they have the ultimate get out of jail free card in Brock Purdy. If he plays and plays well and they win, all this stuff becomes a footnote, which is incredibly frustrating because I feel like they won't learn. And it's kind of interesting, Vish. They're still trying to execute the Trey Lance plan in a way, right? Because the 20,000-foot view of this is build the team up, insert the quarterback last. And if it can be a young quarterback on a rookie deal, all the better. That was the original plan for Trey Lance. Okay, that didn't work out, but they're still doing that with Brock because he's still 23 years old and very inexperienced. So they're still kind of trying the same experiment.
Yeah, and they're trying to sell you that he's a veteran quarterback as a young quarterback because of how much he played in college, which I think does help him for sure, right? Like, he's very experienced and you can tell he knows how to play quarterback. That comes from repetitions, right? But I don't think that he's going to be without growing pains, for example, this year, just because he's going through his first year as the franchise quarterback of the 49ers. And whether that brings growing pains on the field, which I'm assuming it will also bring them off the field for him as well. And that's where I do think there is some irony in this. Now, there is a little nuance that separates the two different situations, but the irony is that they're still executing that same plan, and people are kind of thinking that, okay, now it's going to be smooth sailing because of Brock Purdy. And this isn't even a criticism of Brock Purdy. This is just the reality of what happens to young quarterbacks who don't get named Patrick Mahomes by when mama takes them out of the crib. She doesn't name them Patrick Mahomes. They have growing pains in the NFL.
Right. And that happens to everybody. And that doesn't mean that if Brock has some growing pains that he's not going to be a good quarterback. We won't be able to say that either. No. It just means it's going to get tough. And, hopefully, the rest of the roster around him can make up for that, as the original plan was sort of to be, but we won't know that. We have no idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We won't know. And we better hope, because it's one of those things, Rob, where none of these conversations matter until they lose. And once they start losing, it's going to become the reason why they lost. And like I said, it could have nothing to do with the football reason, but you bet people will make sure that the story is told that this is why they lost, right? Like the Jim Harbaugh 49ers were 6-4 or 7-4 before in 2014 before they lost that Thanksgiving game to Seattle. And once they lost that game and the season started going downhill, we heard a million different reasons why that season never should have worked in the first place.
They were 7-4 going into that game, and they finished 8-8 on the season. So that tells you all you need to know about that. It's like a kink in a hose. Right now, the hose is kinked. If they win, it'll stay kinked and we'll be fine. But if they lose, you're going to unkink that hose and everything that was building up behind it is going to come pouring out. And we're still going to hear, watch, Vish, we're going to hear stories about Trey Lance, about how he wasn't a good fit. He lined up over the wrong position, or he did the
you saw that one that Juszczyk had to tell him? Juszczyk told every quarterback besides Brock that started where to line up.
Right. And Juszczyk was telling Jimmy Garoppolo about the coverages too. So
right.
We will hear stuff. I'm promising you we're going to hear stuff because that's just the way it works. I want to get to this because he's been waiting a little. Chris, thanks for the super chat. YouTube channel member. Off topic, I've been reading a lot of good things about Matt Pryor. Biggest fear of mine has been the O-line. If he is looking good, I feel better. I don't feel good about any of the 49ers backup offensive linemen, Vish.
No, not at all. I think that they've actually invested a decent amount into their backup offensive line. It's just that developing offensive lineman is slow in the NFL, right? And to me, like Zakel, Poe, they all look a year away. And I think it's the same situation as 2019 a little bit, where they had Sean Coleman supposed to be their swing tackle. He gets hurt. I think he broke his ankle. And then he sat out the next year for COVID. But he broke his ankle in 2019, and they went with the School Brunskill combination, basically. Their offensive line stayed healthy besides the two tackles, and they were able to basically compensate with how good their roster was to having those two guys playing tackle. I think they're taking that same exact risk. There's not a lot you can do to sign backup offensive linemen. The first good backup offensive lineman that's available in free agency at this point or via trade at this point will be the first good backup offensive lineman that's available. It's one of those kinds of situations. So for sure, I think more than Matt Pryor, Rob, I think that I'm nervous that if Trent Williams doesn't play 17 games, they could be in for.
It's going to be dicey.
Yeah.
It depends. If it's a one-off, they can get through it. But if it's an extended absence, that's a little dicier. I saw this from Nick Ellert, YouTube channel member. Rappaport said, and this was on the McAfee show, there's been no movement for Bosa, but the Niners have made him a substantial offer to be the highest paid edge player. Interesting wording.
Here's what I called him. Jed, John, or Kyle.
Here's what I don't like. Remember, John Lynch said, we're going to keep everything in-house. We're not going to negotiate through the media. Guess what's happening? This is negotiating through the media. The fact that, look, that's it. Oh, the Niners have made him a substantial offer. He's the highest paid edge player. Why isn't Nick Bosa signing? That's the Niners trying to get the fans on their side in this thing because they've been taking some heat about not having it done already. This is negotiating through the media. And a lot of times this happens, especially at the end of a negotiation, but it's a sign that maybe things aren't
to win the fan. This is to win the fans because Ian Rappaport put that story out and people got very upset. By the way, nobody asked except the last question to John Lynch. Nobody asked about that Nick Bosa story that KNBR ultimately deleted. But because he put the story out that Nick Bosa could be willing to miss week one, this is a comeback saying that no, it's not us, it's Nick. We gave Nick money. He's just being greedy. That's what they're saying. They're not saying it because they want to sign Nick Bosa, and you don't want to tick him off by calling him greedy, but you also want to put the public pressure on him by saying, hey, everybody, Nick Bosa wants too much money.
Because there's been no public pushback on Bosa. I haven't heard anybody say Bosa's greedy. And by the way, I don't think Nick Bosa is greedy. I think Nick Bosa just knows exactly what he's worth.
So
he deserves it. But that's what this is. And so that whole negotiating through the media.
Rob, we talked about this. This is status quo with how the Niners do contracts. It always it's the Dark Knight quote. The night is always darkest before dawn. It's that for the 49ers, the Kittle deal got contentious. Jack Becta, his agent, wouldn't talk to them.
The St. Valentine's Day massacre, he called the 49ers first offer.
Exactly. The Debo deal, Like we saw publicly how contentious it got. The Warner deal was the one that didn't, but they've done highest paid linebacker contracts before. So even at the time, I was saying that one wouldn't get contentious because they
Trent
did the
Williams
Bowman
did.
deal, they did the Willis deal. Trent Williams got contentious. So every big contract they do, this happens. I assume they'll get the contract done. But again, I put the August 31st date on this contract because that's when Aaron Donald came back in 2018. It's August 28th. I'm officially a little bit worried because to me, it's a 2-3 day window. Get this done now.
I saw that Barrows was on 95.7 The Game, I think, and he said that, oh, shoot, why can't I pull this up? Basically that they're using the roster cut down day, I think, as the deadline, because that's what matters too in this.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
What day is the deadline? Because deadlines spur action. So there's no reason for anybody to budge until they have to. And when they have to, whenever the deadline is.
It's interesting. It's interesting how right before the roster cut down, Dale, these two sides that have allegedly not been talking because they're so upset at each other from this negotiation will get it done, right? It's amazing. It's amazing. Like you could not move that day up like 5 days earlier so that we all feel a little bit better.
And the other thing is like, it doesn't have to be this way. You know, like we say, hey, this is what always happens with the 49ers. Yeah, that might be true, but it doesn't have to be that way. You could just give people your best offer right away. That's the weird thing about it. It's like one side always tries to lowball the other, and it's like both sides know what they're worth. Chris Waddell says Pryor's PFF preseason grades have been good, apparently. Okay, but the eye test hasn't been great for me. For Pryor.
I don't know specifically. If I get time this week, I'll go back and watch them snap by snap. It's tough with PFF grades though, right? Because like, what if like you look at the Chargers game? They ran the ball for the majority of that game. Do you really get a good idea of his pass protection in terms of his PFF grade?
Right. Here's the tweet from 95.7 The Game. Bosa's agent is using Tuesday at 1 p.m., the deadline for getting down to the 53-man roster, as leverage. That's sort of a next data point or a date that I'd be looking at for when this deal gets done. That's true, right? So if you cut people and you're looking to sign some of the free agents that are out there, you need to know how much cap room you're working with and what your cap looks like. And you won't get a true picture of that until Bosa's signed. So that's a good move by Bosa's agent.
Yeah, 100%. By the way, I think this deal does get done. It's just one of those things, by the way. Really funny comment also, Rob. Someone said I look like I'm in a briefcase, and then I looked at myself in the corner, and I kind of see it. But,
get some decorations. And why are your walls black? What do you got?
It's gray, dude. It's gray.
It's weird, dude. It's weird.
Gray. It's great. I just have bad natural light into my room. That's all it is.
Look at this. You got a cabinet door. Come on. I mean, you just one item of 49ers paraphernalia.
What do you want? What do you want up there?
A jersey, a hat, a photo, something. Even your Space Eaters.
My hat's in the closet out there. Come on.
Oh, that doesn't do us any good, does it, Vish? Shout out to Chase in Scottsdale, new YouTube channel member. Appreciate you.
Now you just need to get the other Chases. You got the one in Scottsdale.
Get them all. We welcome all Chases here on the program. I'm trying to think if there was anything else about the Trey Lance situation that I wanted to get to, because I feel like I think about this.
Too said, at least I closed my closet door this week.
Shout out to Sign Me Too, loyal Twitch follower. By the way, you can follow me on Twitch at Stats on Fire. Micah says, Vish, get some 49ers stuff up there. There you go. And Ramelia says, great stream, guys. Props, Rob, and my guy, Vish.
Appreciate it.
I do like that we're going to move away from the quarterback stuff, that the only thing we're going to have to think about now is Brock or somebody else next year. I do enjoy all of that. And as bad as they've botched all the Lance stuff and all of that crap, we're going to be past it now. And it's just going to be evaluate this guy or move on. Do you think, let's say they decide to move on. For example,
Caleb Williams from Brock.
Yeah. Maybe Brock gets hurt again, whatever the case may be. Caleb Williams is out there, or let's say it's Drake May or some quarterback, right? That's really, really good that Kyle happens to love. Do you think they'd be willing to pull a mega deal to try and trade for him? Or do you think now because of the Lance situation that's off the table? Because that's another repercussion from this thing, is that maybe they're a little hesitant to make another big swing because of what just happened.
I mean, you would assume, I'd assume if I was Jed York, I'll say that, because now this gets into a very, very speculative perspective. If I was Jed York, I wouldn't let these two guys trade up for another quarterback. What have they done to convince me that they deserve to just spend all those assets?
You're
Now,
not wrong.
doesn't mean I wouldn't let them be the two people to choose the next quarterback in the case Brock Purdy doesn't work out, which we are a lot of things happening from that case. But yeah, I wouldn't let them choose that.
How about Patel? Let Brian Greasy pick. He's the one that picked Brock, apparently, right? That's what John Lynch was a guest on the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder and Fred Taylor. And he said one of the people most heavily responsible for Brock Purdy is Brian Greasy. So there you go. Maybe we should just let Brian Greasy pick. I mean, he might not be the quarterback coach next year if he decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. But let's get that pick in there before he leaves.
It's a weird thing, man.
Chris says, Vish, get a P.O. box and post it. I guarantee a bunch of us here would send you some stuff to decorate your background.
Stuff isn't the issue. I'm just not a big decorations guy. Somebody else, if I will invite anybody to my house, come here, you can decorate the crap out of it, but I'm not going to be the one sitting there wasting time in my day to put decorations up. I'll tell you that.
Wow. He sees it as a waste of time to entertain you. I'm just saying, look at my background. Okay. That's not an accident.
Yeah. Your background, the player that you have beef with on the 49ers, you're sticking his jersey back there as if, oh, what a background.
I want to get to this. Arthur says, did you see Willie Snead say Brock reminds him of Drew Brees? Willie played with Brees. Yeah, I know. Again, like,
I also remember when Dante Whitner compared Scott Tolzien and called him Baby Brees all through training camp. Come on.
We don't need that. Brock doesn't have to be Drew Brees, and he doesn't need that kind of pressure. Like, so what if he doesn't live up to Drew Brees? Now it's a disappointment. Like, no, man. It's let Brock be Brock.
Agreed. By the way, we haven't touched on this, and we didn't talk about it. And I did notice Micah Kimba on the comments is my blinds actually are open. I just don't get a lot of natural light in here.
Vish doesn't even open his blinds for sunlight. I figured it out. You're a vampire. I've never seen you outside during the day. Your walls are black and there's no sunlight in the room. You're
the next time I'm going to wait, my old room used to have sunlight. You used to tell me to shut the blinds before we started the podcast. You'd be like, hey, there's a little light peeking out, blah, blah, blah. But he did talk about the kicker thing. And you and I actually haven't talked about this. This is also, you want to talk about a bad situation. And this is kind of just unlucky. But the kicker thing is kind of, it's a scary proposition right now.
Yeah, so they don't have one. Is basically the problem.
Right.
Jake Moody.
It can't be Wishnowsky, right? He's established. He's not. Yeah.
Yeah, he can't. Well, he can't even punt. So that's a whole
he's shanking punt after punt. Yeah.
Special teams right now for this team are not looking good. We don't know about Moody. Maybe Moody can go. I think it was hilarious that people were trying to blame Kyle Shanahan because Moody kicked too many long field goals in practice. And they were saying that Shanahan got Moody hurt, which is, I mean, that's like next level.
Wait, that was a thing?
Oh, I saw some people saying that. Yeah.
I didn't see that one was a thing. That one is, whoo, you're really stretching.
Zane Gonzalez is going to be out for a couple of weeks. So basically it comes down to, can Moody heal up and be good to go? Or do the Niners need to sign a kicker? Now, it's a tough situation because if you stick with Moody, like, he's got to stay healthy because Tuesday and, this is when all the kickers are going to become available. Teams are going to cut guys, whatever. So if you need a kicker, now's the time to get one. What do you think they do? Do you think it's Robbie Gould? I don't think it's going to be Robbie Gould because, like Levin pointed out, he'd be a vested veteran, and the Niners are not going to want to do that.
Yeah, so, the vested veteran that you sign, if you sign him, if he's on the roster week 1, he gets the fully guaranteed veteran salary, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, I agree, by the way. I don't think it will be Robbie Gould. I think that ship has sailed. I think they wanted to move in a different direction, but I'm not actually sure what they're going to do, whether maybe they move one of these linebackers that's going to get cut and try to get a backup kicker somewhere. But yeah, this is not a great situation. Moody not looking good was a little bit worrying, but at least we got those practice reports that Moody was really good.
Right.
And then Moody getting hurt with that going. By the way, I don't know whose injury went day to day or week to week. Shanahan used a pronoun, so he didn't specify if it was Gonzalez or Moody that was week to week.
No, I don't think it's. I think he said something else about Gonzalez that he's going to be out for a little while. I think he said
A
it on the
little while.
conference
Okay.
call after the game. So I think Moody is truly week to week. Micah says, I'm worried about our kicking game. I've seen teams lose Super Bowls because of bad kickers. Moody's looked bad when he was out there. Our two kickers are hurt. How about this one? Sign me too. Hopefully this forces Kyle to be more aggressive on fourth down. I agree. I hope it does. I hope he has no faith. If they go away from Moody, I hope he has no faith in whoever they bring in. And so he just goes for it. Please, 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 please. And if it works a couple times, then maybe he gets a little more confident. It could possibly work to the Niners' advantage.
By the way, with Greenlaw banged up, with Hufanga banged up,
Yep.
this defense with Bosa not here, the depth is now nowhere near on this defense as good as it used to be. This defense is kind of limping into the season. They might have to be a more aggressive offensive team than they've ever been. And the offense looked in rhythm with Brock Purdy. Debo looked good. Ayuk looked good. Brock Purdy, was operating the offense as Brock Purdy has shown he can. So perhaps their offense needs to be explosive and very, very clinical, especially early in the season as the defense gets its feet wet a little bit and gets Bosa reintegrated again and all of that.
Chris says Justin Tucker hit an 87-yarder in pregames the other day. I did not hear
that.
I don't know if that
Off
maybe
a tee or off a hold?
Right. I don't know. And I'm not saying you're wrong, Chris. I'm just saying I haven't seen that, but damn, that would be incredible.
He's the greatest ever. It's
Oh my
wild how ridiculous. He's like he's literally like Steph Curry, except in kicking.
Yeah, that's true. I will say this about Brock. I thought like they asked Brock to do way more than what he did against the Broncos was nothing.
Right.
But he came in against the Chargers and it was, man, it was just boom, boom, smooth, going through the reads. Like it was very, very impressive. If that continues, then the Niners will have the offense to make up for a little bit of a regression by the defense. I mean, they have the talent. We know this. It's just going to come down to what defenses try to do when they're actually scheming stuff up. Can the Niners offensive line hold up? But I think that his mobility is going to be more important this year than ever before because I think the line is not totally where it needs to be. And he's going to have to make plays on his own. And I'll say this, there are a lot of examples of the Niners calling like a bootleg. And sometimes the lineman bites on the fake and is completely wiped out of the play. But sometimes they don't, Vish. And it's your quarterback one-on-one. I feel like we saw it a lot with Trey Lance, and we've seen it some with Purdy. Purdy makes that guy miss like every time.
Yeah. His first game against Tampa Bay, he had a really, really cool play where they busted the protection on the half-naked boot. He slips under the guy when he's ready to throw, and then he resets and throws a pretty nice ball to Debo coming back over across the field on the third window. So he makes a lot of plays pretty naturally. And I like that he ran in the touchdown too, by the way. Like, I like that he's confident already and decisive in using his legs. Oh, Jesus.
Fish, do you practice the dark arts at night in this room? Oh, I love all the shade you get about your background.
I think I do have Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in my room right now, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But I agree with you. I think that's going to be massive in the red zone. Just the threat of Purdy running consistently in the red zone will open stuff up for other people. And I hope he starts to do it a little more because that can overcome the scheme. And Kyle's scheme is at its toughest, I think, in the red zone. If he can do those kind of things, that's going to be huge for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that they actually have better depth at wide receiver. Like, to me, Ronnie Bell is more ready to play in terms of fitting into their offense than maybe Ray McLeod was, maybe Danny Gray was last year and all of that. So I actually think they have four receivers who can like do what they're being asked. And I think they're training Ronnie Bell to play Z, X, and in the slot at the F position. So I think that they're having him rep at all three, which is cool to see.
Good.
Yeah.
Flave says Brandon Marshall tells a story about how Kyle Shanahan pushed Mike Shanahan.
How you said that.
What, Flave? He's got the accent at the end, right? Isn't it Flave?
But it does it have the tune? Because instead of Flave, you said Flave. Hey,
let me try to jazz it up a little bit.
I liked it. Continue. My bad.
Kyle pushed Mike Shanahan to draft Brandon Marshall when Kyle was young. Despite what their scouts said, it worked out and seems like Kyle believes his gut is the best talent evaluator since. I don't know. I think wide receiver is a little different for Kyle because he played receiver in college. So I think he really feels like he has a beat on that position. I don't know if he applies that to all positions. He might. I don't know. I mean, Kyle does think Kyle's pretty great. Just ask him. But I'm not sure. Vish, what do you think?
Yeah, my point isn't, hey, tell Kyle Shanahan that he cannot be the one to draft players anymore. It's just that to me, there needs to be a little bit. If he's had the opportunity to trade up 7 different times for an offensive player that he said after the draft, like he needed, he wanted, he had to have that guy, and 6 times that guy has completely failed. Like maybe we need to ask Kyle a question of, hey, why are you falling in so wait, Kyle, I know you're in love with that guy, but let's make sure the trade makes sense and all of that, because in all of those times they've given up unnecessary assets too. Like why did they trade up 10 picks for Dante Pettis? According to Kyle Shanahan, Dante Pettis was a way better prospect than DJ Chark. I don't know about that one.
Dicey. And the weird thing is Kyle always talks about when it comes to his play calling and his aggressiveness, not being emotional, guarding against emotion, not getting caught up in the moment. He really seems to make it a point to try and avoid that. But then you're right. When it comes to like scouting and stuff, sometimes it does feel like it's super emotional. And those have been his worst decisions. Beats and Meats says, am I hallucinating or does Kyle not let his quarterback call audibles? They usually have a cannet, right? They usually
have built-in checks, but sure, you won't see Shanahan letting his quarterback come to the line and do what Aaron Rodgers does, where they might, bring a short motion to change leverage, or he might sight adjust a concept to the backside because they want to run something with Garrett Wilson now, or what Devontae Adams used to do. I think, but also how many quarterbacks have you seen in Kyle's offense that are like that level, but have been there for an extended period of time, right? Like maybe if you had a third year with Matt Ryan would be calling the whole offense, the line of scrimmage. They had that turbo package with Matt Ryan.
Right. Gerson Perez says, God bless, blah, blah, blah. Who the hell wants to listen to this for 2 weeks before the season? Depressing. I don't understand. What is the problem? Are we not supposed to talk about the areas of the team that are, a little bit lacking? Like, do you want just everybody on the 49ers is awesome? They have a team full of all pros. Everything's going to be perfect. We're winning this Super Bowl. They're going to go 17-0 in the regular season. Like, is that what you want for 2 weeks?
No, damn. What they want is for you to chart every single metric in practice. And then once there's a metric that shows correlation with what actually happens, decide that that's the metric. That's the most important metric. Right. 1 year ago, it was the move the ball period completion percentage. But this year, everybody had an equal move the ball period completion percentage. So now it's the red zone period completion percentage.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Move those goalposts. I'll say that. What did you think of the press conference after the game? Because I had said that the tone was going to be a little different because the 49ers press corps was ticked off because of how the Niners handled it. I'd like the question from, I think it was Mayoko right out of the bat, like, how are the 49ers better because of this trade? And Kyle had no answer. And he tried to pin it as like, well, we did what's best for Trey. But really, the quarterback room is worse right now than it was last year. And that's indisputable. Purdy, Darnold, and Brandon Allen is a worse quarterback room than Lance, Garoppolo, and Purdy.
Because Purdy's a wash and Garoppolo is definitely better than everybody else remaining.
And it's more expensive.
Right. It is more expensive. I will say one thing, Rob, because I said it last week, and I think I actually said it the week before. Since the start of preseason, I've said that this marriage isn't working. They needed to move on. Okay, so I'm actually completely okay with the trade. I thought it was the best move for both parties involved. I thought it was the move that made most sense for both parties involved. And in fact, I thought the compensation was better than any of us ever thought they were getting. A 4th round pick is not something I thought they were getting back at this point in Trey Lance. So I want to give them credit for all of that. But I do agree with you. I thought the press corps did a really, really nice job asking real questions. I thought John Lynch and Shanahan answered them about as well as they could. There's nothing they can say in that moment that's going to change anybody's mind. But at least in that moment, what they were was not rude, not sarcastic, not, putting down the reporters. They answered. Well, John Lynch always does that. This is more Kyle. He was very respectful. He looked like somebody that was a little bit down of what happened. He definitely was nice to Trey Lance and all of it. I thought he answered about as given. Look, the situation they created Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday was horrible given all of that, the best way they could have answered the questions is how they answered them on Friday. Now, is it going to satisfy anybody? Absolutely not.
No.
But they had created a situation where that's basically all they could say or do.
So let's look at it going forward. I don't think Kyle's going to get asked about Lance anymore. I think that's done. They have, as Patel points out, I think right here, 11 picks, something like that. I know it's a lot. Are the 49ers in a good spot this year right now in terms of this year and going forward if they did want to make a quarterback change?
Like from Purdy?
Yeah.
No, not in terms of the cap. I think it's a really, really tricky spot in the cap. But I think they have Purdy's contract, and Sam Darnold being 1 year does give them an opportunity to pivot.
And Brandon Allen's here too.
Well, he doesn't really matter. He's third string.
No, I know, but Brock's the only one under contract beyond this season.
Right. So they do technically have open space to pivot, is my point.
Yeah.
But once you add the Bosa deal to this mixture, once the Ayuk deal, because I think Ayuk is going to earn this season with how he's going to play, I think it's going to be a very, very tricky situation. I don't even look. I think perhaps there's a plan for that, Rob. I'm sure they have planned because that's what organizations are supposed to do. But I think all of them right now are hoping that they really do have a shamrock up their ass, as Mike Florio likes to say with Brock Purdy. Like they really did just nail this one, and they don't have to worry about it. Because if they do, it's going to be a tricky situation, and I think they're going to have to break up the roster to be able to get another cute quarterback if they have to in 2024.
It does feel like this is kind of the Avengers Endgame for the 49ers. Like we knew
this core, right?
Yeah, we knew Black Widow was not going to be there. We knew Robert Downey Jr. was not going to do any more movies. It does sort of feel like that. Flave says, have you heard that it was mostly Brian Griese that loved Purdy before the draft? Quarterbacks overall were much improved last year too. Seems like the fan base poops on him, but he could have actually been a really great hire.
Great point.
I mean, Lynch has said that Griese is one of the people most responsible for Purdy. So they are not hiding that. But that is a good point. The quarterbacks reduce their number of turnovers in a way that we have not seen under Kyle Shanahan once Brian Griese arrived. So credit 100%. To him. So
and
good.
Brock, he got a rookie quarterback ready to jump in week 8 or week 9 or week 10, whenever Brock Purdy had to jump in, and he was ready to play at that point, right? Like he had him fully integrated, learning the offense, and he had him ready to play. That's the quarterback coach spending time with him and all of that. Flave, as you like to say, brings up a great point.
Yeah.
Brings up a great point.
Even Lance was very positive about Brian Griese also, although Lance is pretty much positive about everybody. Sean9519er says Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have had some busts in the draft, but also have nice picks over the years as well. Trade number 2 to Chicago for number 3 and a third rounder in 2018 equals Warner. Ayuk, trade 3rd for Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, F the picks and win number 6. Yeah, like
true, absolutely.
There's good and bad. I don't necessarily agree with David Lombardi. Like you have to look at the whole portfolio when you decide. Nope, you can look at individual picks and say they were terrible too. But acting like the 49ers have done some really good things in the draft is crazy.
This is what I don't get. We don't have to say it. It goes without saying. They are where they are. Like these two guys have been here for 7 years because they have done a lot of excellent things. Like that is literally obvious point blank in front of us that these two guys have done a very good job at their job because I said it, right? GMs and coaches get turned over more than a Nathan Peterman box score. There's more turnovers in that job than the Nathan Peterman box score. And these two guys have kept it for 7 years, which is lot longer than the average person who takes both of those jobs. Okay, so they've done a really good job. But at the same time, it's been 7 years and they haven't done the job. And the question is, after 7 years of doing an excellent job, how can you get that little bit better to get to the Super Bowl? And that's where you look at some of these blunders and you do have to have a conversation and reevaluate what your process is.
100%. And, we don't always have to take John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan out for an ice cream cone when we want to criticize them. Like you said, it goes without saying. Of course, they've done a lot of good things. Being together for 7 years is an eternity in the NFL. Kyle Shanahan, I think, is like the 3rd longest tenured coach in the entire league. It's like Belichick, Harbaugh, Tomlin.
And then it's him, McDermott, and McVay.
Yeah, so that doesn't just happen by accident. Zockman176 watching on Twitch says, hey guys, what up? I saw a funny tweet from Mike Silver, which I know a lot of people hate, but by the way, Mike Silver has been dead on with all of this stuff. So don't just ignore Mike Silver because you don't like him. Silver says, hey, it's the time of year when we learn on Twitter that player X has been released, but he just needs a change of scenery and is a strong practice squad candidate / will generate interest from other teams. Funny because I feel like we hear that about somebody else on the 49ers roster. I can't really remember who, but that's what you do, right? When you want a guy that's been on a bunch of teams, that we say he just needs to change his scenery. He'll be good here. I know he sucked everywhere else, but he'll be good here. We know what we're doing. That's what everybody thinks when they pick up one of those guys.
Well, yeah, obviously, and they have to believe that, right?
Chris says, Stats, you should try to get a Cone Lombardi show. One seems to think we are doomed and the other thinks undefeated. You'd be a good moderator. Well, maybe I could try that. I mean,
here's my issue, though. I think there has to be some consistency, and I think David Lombardi does a fantastic job. I follow his reporting a lot. So even though I go at him on Twitter, I follow him on Twitter, and I follow his reporting. I think he does a very good job reporting on the team. But sometimes I think there has to be a little bit of consistency. He was tweeting about how there was never a compatible timeline for Trey Lance to be their third string quarterback. That's why they traded him. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both literally said they traded him because he asked for a trade and they wanted him to be their third string quarterback. So they literally saw the compatible timeline, let alone the fact that before the trade, he had been going on and on about QB option power and how having Trey Lance as your third string quarterback maximize quarterback option power. And now it's not a compatible timeline to keep him as your third string quarterback. He does an awesome job, but sometimes you have to be a little bit consistent. If I'm inconsistent, call me out too. I called him out because he wasn't inconsistent. He wasn't consistent or was inconsistent.
Right. I like everything Lombardi does that's not about quarterbacks. He does articles with Matt Barrows at the beginning of and the end of the year. They go through like position by position. They have really good information in there, stuff that I didn't even know. And I'm literally watching this team 24/7 all the time. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the quarterbacks, he just carries the team's water, and it's absurd. It's gotten to absurd levels. The whole idea that the 49ers have been selling us about the strength of a quarterback room is garbage. Only one plays at the time, okay? You don't need a good quarterback room. You need one really good quarterback. Who cares about the rest of the room? I hate that argument.
Yeah, well, I mean, they clearly do. It's what I told you last week about Darnold most likely being the backup. I told you this would happen, Stats. I gave you 2 days.
Yeah, the weirdest part about that is people are like, well, what if somebody has to come in and win a game? Sam Darnold's a safer bet. It's like, I literally saw Trey Lance come in off the bench and beat the Texans. Like, what are we talking about here? So the logic has been inconsistent. I think that this is how the 49ers have wanted it from the beginning. They've gotten it. And like I said, all can be forgiven if they play and win. All can be forgiven. My question to you
I'll tell you why it was a good thing what they did. Before you go to your question to me. It's because they built the best possible room around Brock Purdy to make it Brock Purdy's team, make it Brock Purdy's room. The thing that we complained about them not doing a year before, because you and I were both, this is a hedge. Jimmy Garoppolo coming back is a hedge. It's an indictment on Trey Lance, and we both took criticism for it. We were both correct about that. Similar to that, I do think for us criticizing about that last year, for them to not do that to Brock Purdy this year, clear the decks, even take away the conversation, because if he played bad week one against Pittsburgh, we won't talk Sam Darnold, but we'll be talking the third string quarterback, okay? Because of how much they invested on them. And so because of that, I do think what they did to create this quarterback room for Brock Purdy and build the best quarterback room around him, it is actually a good thing.
And do you think that they always would have done that, or do you think that they learned after the Trey Lance situation?
I hope they learned.
I would hope
I'll
too.
Say that, yeah. I don't know. We don't know that, right? Because I don't think they have ever said that it was an untenable situation between Garoppolo, Lance, and all of that. They've always said that they wanted to create that leash for him.
Right, but I don't care about that. I don't really care what they say. They don't ever have to admit that they were wrong, through their words. If
true.
Like, just what do you
Their actions
do?
tell us. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right.
And what they have done so far is the right thing. It is the right thing. If Brock Purdy doesn't develop or doesn't become anything, it's not going to be because the 49ers mishandled it, because they've handled it pretty much great. So that at least is reassuring, because
John C is Oh, my bad. Go ahead. I was reading this comments by accident. Guys calling us inconsistent. Or asking me if I'm consistent. I would love for anybody to tell me where I've not been consistent about the 49ers quarterbacks or anything like that.
You listen when I talk, or you scan the comments?
This time I was scared. Dude, they were coming at us. I was defending both of us. I'm defending us.
I forgot what I was even saying.
You were talking about the question I had to ask for you, and then I went on and on, and I said, Rob, they've created the best quarterback situation around Brock.
Right.
You said, okay, did they learn from it? And then you were coming back to what the question you had for me is.
But I still forgot the question. So,
all right. My bad. Okay, that's on me. That's on me. But you know what, Rob? I was defending us. That was about us. Me and you, man. We're in this together.
Okay, really quick, because we're getting a little long here. Who's the surprise cut the 49ers make before Tuesday? Do you have one?
I don't think it will be Isaiah Oliver. I think that's the guess here. I just don't know if the money makes sense. And I don't know that they have a lot of quarterback depth, to be honest, even if he does get cut. But I will.
It's tough. Wilkes loves Oliver, so I don't think he's getting cut, especially he just went to the wall for him, too.
I'm trying to think, man. It's got to be a defensive lineman. It's got to be a defensive lineman that we don't see coming, because I feel like the rest of the positions we kind of know. Or maybe it's a running back, dude. They talked up Ty Davis's price's weight all offseason. He did look good, and he ran the ball fine, but oh my God, he struggled in pass protection.
He can't pass block.
And they talked up Trey Sermon last offseason. Now, Jordan Mason existed. That's why Trey Sermon was cut. There's nobody there for Ty Davis Price. So actually, Vish, bad take.
AJ says Kinlaw.
I don't think it'll be Kinlaw.
No?
No. Kinlaw is unique, man.
Alberto says, come on, Rob, you sound like a female. Don't get into your feelings. How about anybody that criticizes you and refers to you as a woman? They never say woman. They say the word female. What the hell is going on with that? Alberto, go pound sand, okay? We've got multiple women on this network that could run circles around you from a football knowledge perspective, so you can get off of that garbage. I'm trying to think of like a shocker cut. Do you think it's one of the receivers?
Maybe Ray, but like now that Ray's hurt, it's like PUP made, right?
Yeah, and I think they didn't do anything with Ronnie Bell in the final preseason game because they're like, we're good. We know you're good.
Oh, definitely. That one was obvious. Perhaps you see like a Tay Martin or a Chris Conley sneaking here.
Conley's hurt too now with the shoulder.
Yeah, you're right.
Do they keep three quarterbacks?
You're right.
Or do they sneak Brandon Allen onto the practice squad?
No, they got to keep three, dude. They got to keep three. This is the team that the rule was made for, and then they keep two quarterbacks. It's almost like they're spitting on the NFL.
But Kyle has said that the rule, and I agree with him, it's not really the rule that they wanted. What they wanted was an extra roster spot just for an emergency quarterback.
Okay, fair enough.
But you don't have that now. Yeah, you still have to have the guy on the 53. So they may keep only two. Right. Chris says, based on how Kinlaw has looked, maybe he should switch to O-line. Michelle said he plays D-line like he's blocking. Yeah, she did say that.
Oh, my God. That's a harsh criticism.
He does get pushed around for a guy that's supposedly that big and strong, man.
Okay, a little bit, yes. But if you look at their run fits on a whole, they've been undisciplined as a defense. Like the one that they get pushed, he gets quote-unquote pushed out of the way on the big run the Chargers had. Jalen Graham is supposed to close the A-gap. Where is he? Why didn't he do it?
He's not in the right spot. Do you think Graham and Winters both make the roster?
Yeah. Graham's really good.
Graham, they are freaking flying around, man.
And Winters looks like you just give him 1 year on whatever weight plan that Marcelino McCrary Ball was on, Fred Warner is on, Dre Greenlaw has been on. You give Winters 1 year on that, and you might have a stud because he flies. It's just he's really small.
The Niners really, really need contributions from the last two draft classes. That would also ease some of the pain from Trey Lance. You have to get contributions from guys that you took in the later rounds, impact contributions, because that's the tightrope that you walk when you lose those first round picks, because those are the guys that are most likely going to be your impact guys. So they have to get more than they have gotten out of that draft class, Purdy included.
Agreed, 100%. By the way, Rob, our hater, John C., he doesn't even listen to the show. He goes, here is an example. You defend Fields by calling out his coaching, but then you throw that argument out with Darnold. Have I not defended Darnold to you about he was in crappy situations with Matt Rule and Adam Gase? Like, that was literally our show last week. Come on, man. Watch the show before you criticize.
That's the most insane thing. Christian says, love you guys, but that was soft, Rob. Come on. What was soft? I don't understand.
Ooh, Rob, yeah, you're soft. I'm not soft. I don't care.
Tony Foster says, Kyle got snarky with the reporter at the end of the press conference. Yes, he did.
That was a dumb question.
It was really weird. That was a
ridiculous question.
It was a ridiculous question, but also like, Kyle, like, stop. Just say, no, we wanted to evaluate Jake Moody. Like, why do you have to do he gets so defensive when people question him and he thinks he knows more about football than them, which he knows more about football than almost everybody. But like,
he does, obviously.
Just don't be an ass.
Come on, Rob. That question, look, there were so many questions you could have asked. You had 10 minutes with Kyle Shanahan after maybe the biggest story of the 49ers that dropped this offseason, and you ask him why he chose to kick a field goal on one specific drive.
I'm not saying
they actually got the ball back and he came back down and drove them down for the win.
I'm not saying it was a good question. It was a terrible question, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to like try and punish people for asking bad questions. He goes out of his way to be a jerk. And I don't like it. Mr. J. Fizz.
You feel like he went out of his way? I feel like he was going out of his way to be nice for the first 8 questions. And then the bad question just brought out who Kyle is. And he's kind of snarky. That's who he is.
He's a condescending jerk. When it comes
some of us are, all of us are sometimes.
When he gets questioned, he is. Mr. J. Fizz, they might cut Elijah Mitchell for being injured a lot. Yeah, he's banged up again, Vish. The adductor got tight on Elijah Mitchell. Again, like how long can you wait on this guy?
I saw that, but I don't think Elijah Mitchell movement. I don't know how you can watch Jordan Mason and Ty Davis Price in pass protection and in the pass game. Though Jordan Mason ran a really nice choice route versus the Chargers. A really nice choice route.
The one where Brock hit him over the middle?
Yep. 3rd and 2, 2nd and 2, something like that. But either way, really nice choice route. I don't know how you can watch both of those two guys and be like, yes, if Christian McCaffrey goes down, we're going to be fine. It's going to be the Jeff Wilson situation all over again. But these two guys are probably not as good as Jeff Wilson was. More talented, not as good.
Also, if you want Jeff Wilson, just trade a 5th-round pick. You can get Jeff Wilson back.
He's not worth a 5th-round pick, man.
But I mean, like the idea that, oh no, we can't ever get a Jeff Wilson comparable player. Like, yeah, you can. You can. It's not hard.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think Mitchell they should move off of him this offseason then just because of the injuries?
Yeah, like he's never contributes to the team. If it's win now, Super Bowl or bust, and we can't wait for anybody, then don't wait for anybody. Like it's one or the other.
Fair enough. I just feel like it's a little different when a guy's getting banged up, especially when you know he is a contributor early. Perhaps you can get him to the season and get him less touches, but I think that they will need Elijah Mitchell at some point in the season because running backs wear down with Kyle Shanahan, man. Freeman and Alfred Morris are the only two I can remember that really went through the entire season with him, and they probably ended their careers going through those 2 seasons with Kyle Shanahan because he uses the crap out of his running backs.
You're not wrong. But then if you're saying, well, okay, we got to keep Elijah Mitchell, but we got to use him less. It's like, okay, then now you're making him even less of a contributor. Like, that's not what I want. I need a guy that can play. He can't play. It sucks because he's awesome when he's out there. But again, we're waiting. He was injured in minicamp. He was injured in training camp. Then he came back. He was injured again in training camp. Like we haven't even started playing the real games yet, Vish. He hasn't even taken real punishment yet, and he still can't be out there.
Yeah, I can't disagree with your point. It's just like, what do you replace him with? That would be kind of my question. I guess maybe you have 11 picks. Are you saying move one of those 11 picks and get a different backup back, get a different veteran?
Anyone that can play is better than a guy that can't play because he's hurt.
By the way, I will also give Kyle credit for this. Maybe he was right about taking a running back every year because their running back depth is still not there.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with that. Don't have to take him in the first round. Bay Marin. Well, you know it, but I'm saying, like, just don't take him high. Bay Marin says, missed the beginning. Now rewinding from the start, and we'll play it on 2 times. I bet $5 I won't catch you before the end of the show.
Yeah, I
don't think you will.
If you just started, no chance. But watching on 2 times, that's mad respect. I don't know how anybody watches us live. I cannot listen to a podcast, watch a show unless it's on at least 1.25 or 1.5 speed.
I can't even imagine what I sound like at 2 times speed. That's probably not a
You
fun
sound
listen.
good, dude. You sound good. I sound better, actually. I think I do not sound good at 1 time speed. It also became an issue in school because I went through the COVID thing in college, right? And I got so used to skipping lectures and then watching them back in 2 times speed and just consuming all of it and then going. And then when you had to go back in person and now they're making you show up for these stupid things and
You're
the
like,
teacher is going 1 mile an hour and he's just talking and you're like, holy cow.
Mr. J Fizz says normal speed is fine for me. All right, that's going to do it, everybody.
Mr. J Fizz, try 1.5 speed and come back to our show next week and tell us why it's better.
All right. I like regular speed. But I'm the old dude in the room, so I get it. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Like and subscribe to the Gold Standard YouTube page. Like and subscribe to Vish's YouTube channel. Just type Vish Kumaran, Kumaran, into YouTube. It'll pop right up. Make sure you subscribe. We're moving on. We are moving on to the Brock Purdy era. Roster cuts are coming. I think Bosa is going to sign this week. If I had to bet an amount of money that mattered to me, I'll say Wednesday. Bosa deal signs Wednesday.
So you think he signs August 30th?
Yes.
The day before Donald. That's good for me. As long as he signs before Donald did in 2018, works for me.
The one thing I don't want to hear, though, after the Steeler game is, well, Nick Bosa had a quiet game because he was just coming back from signing so late. It's like, no. You told me all along that he was in such good shape that he was going to be full throttle week 1. But I wouldn't be shocked.
Fair. You can hold me to you. That was me. So you can hold me to that week 1. You can hold me to it week 1. I don't expect him to have a quiet game, by the way. I expect him to be fresh. I expect him to be healthy. I expect him to be geared up and ready to go.
Well, I hope you're right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.